Flicking through the channels last night, I discovered that PJ and Duncan, who of course grew up to become Ant and Dec, have developed a bit of a sideline while presenting this season of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, in holding Boris Johnson and his clown car of a cabinet to rather higher account than most political journalists.
It is all change in Camp Now, though, because yesterday the celebs chose a new leader via the gift of a secret vote.
And that means David's reign is over. But they weren't celebrating.
No.
They didn't have a party. They categorically deny any suggestions that they had a party. And this fictional party definitely didn't involve cheese and wine or a secret Santa.
Evening, Prime Minister! For now.
Westminster bubble, anybody? On prime time ITV, and of course demonstrating that the presenters Ant and Dec managed to move on a sixpence because the story only broke yesterday evening. If you're not aware of the story, then welcome back from whatever rock it is you've been hiding under for the last 12 hours. Here is Allegra Stratton, appointed by the Prime Minister as a sort of special spokesperson, and she was supposed to be the one that would helm the regular press conferences in that £2-point-something million specially built studio that then got put on ice, and she got shifted off to being in charge of COP26 or something. It's rather hard to keep up. But she was a sort of senior communications person at the time of the clip you're about to hear. This occurred on December the 22nd of 2020, and it refers to a party alleged to have taken place, or it reportedly refers to a party alleged to have taken place in Downing Street, attended by about 40 people. And they think it's funny.
I've just seen reports on Twitter that there was a Downing Street Christmas party on Friday night. Do you recognise those reports?
I went home. Hold on.
Would the Prime Minister condone having a Christmas party?
What's the answer?
I don't know.
It wasn't a party, it was cheese and wine.
Just be clear, it's not.
Is cheese and wine all right? No. It was a business meeting.
I'm joking.
This is recorded. This fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
Funny, yeah. 6 minutes after 10 is the time. And of course, any hopes that they may have with the benefit of hindsight realise that this is no laughing matter were rather undone on Monday night when Jacob Rees-Mogg stood up in front of the Institute of Economic Affairs, no less, and cracked even more jokes.
I see we're all here obeying regulations, aren't we? I mean, this party is not going to be investigated by the police in a year's time. You are all very carefully socially distanced. We've moved, I'm pleased to tell you, from the metric bag to the imperial system. I know you were at least 2 inches away, which is, as I understand it, what the regulations require during the social distancing period.
As comedians often say, I wouldn't open with it, Jacob, but he did. He went there, and he still thinks it's funny. I wonder what you were doing on December the 18th. And I wonder whether you feel today that Allegra Stratton and Jacob Rees-Mogg and all of the cabinet ministers have queued up all week to either endorse or obfuscate Boris Johnson's repeated lies. I wonder whether you feel that they are laughing quite specifically and quite directly at you and yours. 03456060973 is the number that you need. And we find ourselves now in the quite remarkable position of having a Prime Minister who claimed that the party had never occurred, but today he will be called upon to take action against a senior member of his staff who has been laughing about the fact 4 days after the reported party and almost casting themselves, all of them in that room, although, listen, I'm not making excuses for anybody, but the more junior you are in that room, the harder it would have been not to join in. We've all been there, in our 20s in particular. I'm not making excuses for anybody, but you go for the senior people in scenarios like that, and in this case it's Allegra Stratton. I'm genuinely really upset, actually. I have not suffered particularly during this lockdown, but I've had the very difficult privilege over the last nearly 2 years of speaking to people who have. Whether it is people that have buried loved ones after going for months without seeing them, whether it is people who've witnessed or seen or met for the first time their newly born granddaughter through the patio windows on Christmas morning, whether it's people that attended funerals on Zoom. That's the closest I've come to real heartbreak, was one of my very best friends who died towards the end of last year, and we had to conduct almost all of the ceremonies and the celebrations of his life over Zoom, which was not fair. It was not adequate. I daren't check the date, just in case. I daren't check the date, just in case they were at that party. Because if they were, I don't know, something would snap inside me. I have another problem this morning, which is I have been telling you for now the best part of, 2.5 years, precisely what these people are made of. I've been explaining it to you at length and in detail. I have been describing it to you with receipts, chapter and verse. And yet I know today that you may still not be ready to admit what we've done. They laugh about it. I know this will sound odd, and it's coming up to 10 minutes after 10. If you can put a sincere spin on this, not a pretend one. I don't want you to channel Malcolm Tucker or come out like a sort of comedy character. If you can put a sincere spin on this, if you can look the rest of us in the eye this morning and tell us why we shouldn't be apoplectic with rage or heartbroken with misery at the idea of the people who were telling us what to do, not only laughing about it 4 days later, laughing about riding roughshod over all the rules and regulations. But for some reason, that Jacob Rees-Mogg clip from Monday night seems to me to make everything worse. A year later, having been caught bang to rights, surrounded by his secretly funded cronies in his think tank environment, he thinks and he knows that he is still free to make jokes about it. He's still free to talk with impunity about something that has, I think, cut to the very quick of the country's patience, the country's tolerance, the country's sense of common decency. I have read a little about the Crown Estate having some form of legal exemption from the rules that the rest of the country were required to follow. It would be a little bit like a diplomatic immunity on embassy grounds or something like that. I don't know whether they'll try and wriggle off the hook using that rather recondite reasoning. I don't know whether he'll try and throw Allegra Stratton under a bus. He hasn't sacked anybody yet, remember, not really. Dominic Cummings was sort of squeezed out after setting the bar so unspeakably high for lying to the British public and again being backed by every single member of every single cabinet that Boris Johnson has appointed. So I don't know whether or not something significant is going to happen today. I don't know what's going to happen at PMQs. We'll be all over it at 12 noon today. And I don't know whether there's anything you can think of currently that would constitute sufficient remorse, that would constitute sufficient response. I genuinely don't. I can't think of anything. I can't think of anything except the people who've broken down on the programme since this nightmare began. And the people who didn't see their loved ones in their final months. The people who put enormously important celebrations and commemorations on ice because they were obeying the rules. The people who possibly were denied the final touch, the final physical touch with their mothers or their fathers or even, God forbid, their children because they were obeying the rules introduced by Boris Johnson, the rules amplified to the nation by Allegra Stratton, the rules mocked and derided even this week by Jacob Rees-Mogg, a man who thinks nothing of misleading the Queen herself, who thinks nothing of presiding over a proroguing of Parliament, and who even in the last 4 weeks has tried to rip up the only rule book the people of Britain have left to hold their MPs to account because his mate, Owen Paterson, had been found to have ridden contemptuously all over it. But then I remember that I'm me and you're you. And this stuff really gets to me. Not every day, not even every month, but every now and then the absolutely irrefutable evidence appears in front of you that this is as bad can be, and they are in charge of our country. They are presiding over a masterclass in incompetence, obfuscation, deceit, dishonesty, and contempt. And still the polls tell us it's neck and neck. Still the polls tell us it's 50-50. I know why. I think Brian, Nick's last caller, nailed it really beautifully, actually. Incredibly articulate call, simply describing himself as someone who doesn't normally get involved, someone who normally lets it all wash over him, somebody who possibly, although he didn't say this, subscribes to that school of thought we examined in detail yesterday that could be loosely described as they're all as bad as each other. We also, of course, yesterday cautiously concluded, or at least I did, that we should probably retain the parliamentary tradition that prevents MPs from calling each other liars in the House of Commons. I wonder whether that 52-48 ratio that I described to you to distill my own feelings on the matter will shift a little bit when Keir Starmer stands up shortly after 12 noon today and addresses a Prime Minister who wouldn't know the truth if it sat on his head. Or maybe that's not fair, of course. Because the worst liars are the ones that know they're lying. There's a weird sort of delusional pathology to the liars who are so far down the rabbit hole of self-deception, they don't even know what the truth is anymore. There's plenty of them in the current cabinet, but I don't know whether Boris Johnson is one of them. All I know is, right now, today, they are dedicating every ounce of energy that this country's political establishment possesses to trying to protect the Prime Minister and his closest aides. They should have been talking to you about new walking clinics. They should have been interviewing Sajid Javid. He wouldn't come on this show, but he should have been on Nick Ferrari's show. He should have been on every other show in town today, telling you about new walking clinics, really putting some oomph into the booster regime, really giving information about how you, if you're worried about it, can get that vaccine into your veins. But they don't think that's as important as closing ranks around Boris Johnson, circling the wagons and trying once again to pass off his lies to the British public. They did it at Barnard Castle. They'll do it again today. Will they get away with it? 0345 60 60 973. I think I've been doing this job too long to feel much optimism that the pendulum will slowly swing back to where we were before and people will come out of this claiming that he's doing his best or he's been treated unfairly or, oh, thank goodness, he's in charge because Jeremy Corbyn would have been even worse. I genuinely don't know what life raft you would cling to as you're tossed about by the flotsam and jetsam that passes for a government in this country. What are you clinging to? Tell me. I'll try not to have a row with you today, although I warn you, my dander is high. How do you cling to it now? You put your trust in this man. Forget the B word for now. You put your trust in him. And he surrounded himself with people who laugh at you.